So this is a video that's been kind of long coming for last couple of weeks. Sorry, I haven't posted since early December. I've been trying to get this video going, and it's been a long time coming. So you may have heard that a certain company that makes chips came out with a new SoC. Call it Snapdragon X Elite. That's what I got here. So what I wanted to do to kind of, since I don't really see people talking a whole lot about it, is I wanted to do a whole comprehensive testing, stuff like that, of video encoders on the Snapdragon X Elite to test it against other things like maybe the Apple M2 sitting over there on the other table, or maybe an X8. I hope you could hear that. Don't get me wrong, the exhaust sounds good. We'll ignore that. Maybe like x86 CPUs, maybe they still have a place in today's world. But make no mistake, the tests that I ran with this are surprising. Because you'll just have to see. Let's get into it. If you're looking for a competent video editor, Sea Weasel Media can help. I have 14 plus years in video editing specifically for YouTube and online video. My calm, cool, and collected editing style isn't in your face, and even add a little bit of humor every once in a while. Head on my link in the description below to visit my Shopify page and explore affordable options for video editing. So we're going to get the riffraff out of the way and dive basically straight into the testing. So all the hardware that we're going to be using today differs depending on the platform. So for our patient, so to speak, for Snapdragon X Elite is this, the Lenovo Yoga Slim 7C. It has the Snapdragon X Elite 8133 in it. So it's a 12 core, 12 thread, no boost clock, nothing like that. It's the base X Elite model. Going any deeper than that, you're going into the Pro territory. For my Mac variety, we have the Apple Mac Mini, the 2023 model with the Apple M2. Not Pro, not Max, just the Ringo App 2. Don't worry about it. And as for our x86 patients today, we're using an Asus TUF Gaming A16 Advantage Edition. So it's got an AMD Ryzen 7 7735HS and the AMD Radeon RX 77S or 7700S for the GPU. Again, testing was surprising, so let's get into it. So we're going to start off with the Snapdragon X Elite right first. So the whole point of today's testing, getting the mediary things out of the way, we're going to be doing 3 runs per video editing software. So the software we have on the docket today is DaVinci Resolve, Blender, and Kdenlive. We'll be running an encode test, taking an H.264 file directly from YouTube off of my account, and we're just going to re-encode it in whatever format makes sense. And we're just looking for times here. We're not looking for for raw numbers. We're just trying to figure out how long it takes for the given processor to encode the video. Basically what we're doing is transcoding, but we're adding a whole bunch of extra steps, which I'm actually taking and you're not, so it doesn't matter. Now, for Resolve, for the Snapdragon X Elite, the first test, the 720p test, took 4 minutes and 8 seconds. Not too shabby, considering the fact that there's no hardware acceleration for the most part involved in this. The thing that sets Resolve apart from the rest of the software we're testing today is that Resolve has this tendency to use a lot more of the system than the other software does. Something like maybe like Vegas Pro or Premiere Pro may only make use of the video encoding ASIC on the GPU, but they don't really go any more farther than that. Resolve takes a little bit of a different approach, and honestly, it's the best approach because it also, as we'll see with the AMD testing, it's a night and day difference between these things, but we'll get into that later. So for the Resolve 8 1080p test, it completed the encode in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Nice. And as for the 4K test, it did it in 6 minutes and 53 seconds. Not too shabby, considering the fact, again, no hardware acceleration to be found here. As for Blender, now Blender is a weird one for me here. So for the 720p test, it did it in 2 minutes and 10 seconds. That's actually really good, considering the fact that it was running entirely on CPU to encode in 720p. For the 1080p test, it did it in 4 minutes and 59 seconds. Again, really good, considering the fact that it was encoding pretty much on the CPU. Now, something I haven't been able to figure out about Blender as of yet is that for whatever reason, when you're exporting video out of the video sequencer, it does not use the GPU. At least not a whole lot of it. We'll see more of that when we get to this, the AMD tests. So keep that in mind as we go into 4K, which took 53 minutes and 34 seconds to encode. Why it took so long to encode this video, I don't know. It's not even double 1080p. It's multitudes longer than 1080p, which you would think that going from, okay, so from 720p to 1080p, double the pixels, sorta, not really. So 1080p going to 4K, again, double the pixels. Double the time? No, it took significantly longer, and that is a pattern we'll be seeing consistently for Blender throughout the rest of our tests. As for Kdenlive is, if you're not hip to Kdenlive, it is a free and open source video editor that is pretty competent in what it can do, but it lags behind many other software, and that includes the encoding department. So for the 720p test, it did it in 1 minute and 53 seconds. Not too shabby. Again, it's rendering on the CPU. As for the 1080p test, it did it in 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Okay, not bad. As for the 4K test, it did it in 6 minutes and 9 seconds. Now, I hope you're seeing a pattern here. That because there's no supported hardware acceleration API, at least on Windows right now, all these tests basically ran, aside from Resolve, but all these tests basically ran on CPU alone. And that's actually kind of impressive. Because if it's running solely on the CPU, imagine how fast these things would be if they finally get an OpenCL fork for GPU acceleration, or an entirely new API, or something that it makes use of the video encoding ASICs or the compute units on the GPU. These things would be absolute monsters. Because 1 minute and 52 seconds to encode was roughly about a 24-minute video entirely on the CPU is not the worst thing in the world, and it could be a lot better. But again, if they had this hardware acceleration API sorted out, these things would be monsters. Because even for the 4K test, it was not making use of the GPU, so having a 6-minute render test, which is quicker, mind you, than the 4K test for Resolve, it says a lot about the Orion CPU on these Snapdragon chips. And I think, if they get the APIs sorted out, we have a monster on our hands for these. But as you can see, the Snapdragon did not do too poorly. It was a pretty competent competitor overall. As for the Apple processors, now, we are going to be omitting the Kdenlive results from this one because I couldn't get Kdenlive to work for whatever reason on my Apple Mac, my Mac Mini. For whatever reason, it would install, but it wouldn't open. So I'm guessing it's just probably an issue with Rosetta or the current version of Kdenlive. I don't know, but we're going to be omitting it because of that. For Resolve, it did the test, or for Resolve 720p, it did the test in 1 minute and 1 second. That is actually a lot better than what the Snapdragon X Elite did, because it's actually I think it's about almost 3.5 minutes quicker. So for the 1080p test, it did it in 1 minute and 33 seconds. Okay, pretty good. Not as good, or it's a lot better than the 1080p test for Snapdragon X Elite. And as for the Resolve test, or 4K test rather, it did it in 5 minutes and 51 seconds. So across the board, a lot faster than the Snapdragon X Elite. It was encoding an average frames per second that I was seeing was somewhere in the 300 to 400 frames per second range. I think for the Snapdragon X Elite, it was somewhere along the lines of maybe 200 frames per second on the 720p test at the most. So the Apple M2 with its metal acceleration definitely has an edge over the Snapdragon X Elite in this regard. And then for Blender, the 720p test, it did it in 2 minutes and 41 seconds. Pretty good. Again, still better than Resolve, or just Snapdragon X Elite. For the 1080p test, it did it in 7 minutes and 5 seconds, which is a lot better. Actually, not a lot worse. Now I'm reading my notes right. Is a lot worse than the 1080p test for Snapdragon X Elite, which is interesting. Not sure what to make of that. And as for the 4K test, it did it in 43 minutes and 42 seconds. Again, a long time, but it seems to be a weird quirk with the video sequencer in Blender. Not sure what's up with that. I'm guessing that there's just in some hardware acceleration API or just something in the code deep down, because for whatever reason Blender does not use the same render engines for encoding video as it does for rendering out 3D objects in like Cycles or Eevee. Even though I ran the test entirely with Eevee. Alright, so here's the test I've been really excited about, because this really goes to show just how incredibly useful x86 still remains to this day. Because, at least in the Resolve test, the AMD system ate both Snapdragon's and Apple's lunch 3 times over. The results were incredible. So for the Resolve 720p test, it did the encode in 33 seconds. Let that sink in. 33 seconds. And what was the one for the Snapdragon X Elite? It was 4 minutes and 8 seconds. So this is where it's going back to when I was saying that Resolve tends to use more of the system than in other audio editing software, and that does ring true here. Because not only was Resolve using the 3D engine on both the GPUs in the system, so I got the iGPU and the discrete GPU, it was using the video encode engine on both GPUs, and it was using the compute units on both GPUs. Because one thing that AMD does better, and does that NVIDIA and Intel does not, which I really wish they would do, is they include compute ASICs on their GPUs. And the drivers for a lot of the software will make use of it, and for good reason. Because it actually does a lot better good to use the compute ASICs than using any other things alone. And this really does show, because for the 1080p test, it did it in 35 seconds. And for the 4K test, get ready, 1 minute and 42 seconds. It was blazing fast. I think at the peak for frames per second of the 720p test was about 550 something frames. It was really fast. It was incredible to see, because it really goes to show that, not only has AMD itself really had put a lot of work into their encoders over the years. I still have Radeon RX 5500 XT that still performs extremely well with the recent software upgrades and software updates, but this 7700S with the RDNA 3 architecture, it just eats everybody's lunch. It's just chews through frames like they're nothing. It's like a bulldozer for video editing, if I can think of any more analogies to describe it. So for the Blender test, again, because there's no hardware acceleration available, it's much of the same spiel. 720p, 2 minutes and 45 seconds. 1080p, 5 minutes and 43 seconds. 4K, not unsurprising, 51 minutes and 55 seconds, which is actually the second best time for Blender of the day, all things considered. But still, I wouldn't use Blender if you're trying to get videos out in a hurry. I would probably stick with Resolve, even though editing in Blender, not to go off on a tangent, but editing in Blender is extremely fluid, everything like that, I wouldn't recommend it. And because I wasn't able to get VOPI working in Kdenlive, I'm going to be omitting the 720p and 4K test for this one, and only including the 1080p test, because it's really the one that kind of matters. It's kind of like still the standard for online video these days. 2 minutes and 18 seconds, entirely on CPU. So as you can see, the AMD CPU completely wiped the floor with a lot of these with the other competition, especially on Resolve. Again, 33 seconds is an incredibly fast time. It goes to show how optimized AMD has gotten their drivers these days. And I'm also running the Pro drivers on this system too. So it's not the gaming Radeon drivers, or Adrenaline as it's called. I'm actually running the Radeon Pro drivers. So I think it kind of gives the AMD system a little bit of an edge, at least on the software side, because of that. But still, like, again, if the Snapdragon were to get an API for the compute unit and as the video encoder on the chip, I think they would be absolute monsters. Because again, the Kdenlive tests running on that chip, almost completely on CPU, and getting the times that it did, 1 minute for 53 seconds, and 6 minutes and 49 seconds for 4K, that's actually pretty good. Especially for like a low power, those 35 some odd watt chip that's not really meant for heavy number crunching, but it's doing it anyway. It's quite impressive, and I really do look to seeing more come out of it in the future. You know what I'm looking at right now? Forgot to turn off the light. Let me fix that. Looks much better. Anyway, so those were the tests. Again, the Snapdragon chip kind of genuinely impressed me. It wasn't the fastest chip of the bunch. I think genuinely in the resolved tests, I think overall with everything, I think the AMD chips did come on top. Sorry to say, but that's what my testing brought up. I would be open to doing more testing in the future for other types of software because, like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't see people going into like the deep dives of the Snapdragon chips on video encoding because, like, as a video editor and a video content creator myself, video encoding can be one of the longest processes that we undertake. It could take a couple minutes, could take half an hour, or almost an entire hour if you're Blender, but making sure that we are able to know that these chips can get this encoding process done means we can get videos out to our clients faster and meet deadlines. So again, I'll reiterate, if Microsoft and Qualcomm can get the API sorted out, maybe get some OpenCL sorted out for it, I really do think that these Snapdragon chips again could be monsters. I really do think they have a lot of potential. So that's really it for me. Yeah, it's nice getting back into the groove of things after a while. It made me realize why I love making videos so much. So if you like this video, give it a like, and if you don't like it, well, whatever you do helps me, so thank you. And if you'd like to see more from the channel, to consider subscribing, liking, I think I said that already, and doing all the things. Follow me everywhere. If you need videos edited, I have Sea Weasel Media. Give me hit up me, I don't know. And yeah, thank you for joining me for playing. See you guys in the next one. Take care.